Good day, friends, and welcome back to Conflicts of the Human Race. Today, I will tell you about the entire story of the Gallic Wars, 5850 BCE. Now buckle up as we begin. In the year 59 BCE, Gaius Julius Caesar secured the consulship of Rome through political maneuvering and massive debts. Desperate for military glory and the wealth to repay his creditors, Caesar looked north to the unconquered lands of Gaul. The Celtic tribes beyond the Alps represented both opportunity and threat. Their warriors were fierce, their lands rich, and their disunity made them vulnerable to Roman divide-and-conquer tactics. When the Helvetii tribe announced their intention to migrate westward through Roman territory in 58 BCE, Caesar saw his chance. He would use this migration as pretext for intervention, beginning what would become 8 years of relentless conquest that would bring all of Gaul under Roman dominion and make Caesar the most powerful man in the ancient world. The Helvetii, a powerful Celtic tribe from what is now Switzerland, had grown restless in their mountain homeland. Pressured by Germanic tribes from the east and seeking richer lands, they planned to migrate westward with their entire population, nearly 400,000 people including women, children, and elderly. Their intended route would take them through the Roman province in southern Gaul, directly challenging Roman authority. Caesar, stationed in northern Italy, moved with lightning speed to intercept them. He destroyed the bridge at Geneva to block their path, then began fortifying the Rhine River with a wall and ditch stretching 19 miles. When the Helvetii requested safe passage through Roman territory, Caesar curtly refused, forcing them to seek an alternate route through the lands of the Sequani tribe. This detour would prove their undoing, as it gave Caesar time to recruit additional legions and pursue them into the heart of Gaul, beginning the systematic conquest that would define his career. At the Battle of Bibracte in 58 BCE, Caesar confronted the Helvetii in their first major engagement. The Celtic warriors, initially confident in their numbers and fighting prowess, launched a fierce uphill assault against the Roman lines. Their long swords and war cries filled the air as they charged the disciplined legions. However, Roman training and tactics proved superior. The legionaries, protected by their rectangular shields and fighting in tight formation, methodically cut down the Celtic assault with their short gladi. When the Helvetii began to waver, Caesar ordered a devastating cavalry charge that shattered their flanks. The battle became a rout, with thousands of Helvetii warriors falling on the blood-soaked hillside. The survivors, their dreams of western migration crushed, were forced to return to their homeland under Roman supervision. This decisive victory established Caesar's reputation as a military commander and demonstrated to all Gallic tribes that Roman discipline could overcome even the fiercest barbarian courage. The first campaign had ended in complete Roman triumph. News of Caesar's victory over the Helvetii sent shockwaves throughout Gaul, but it also created new problems. The Germanic chieftain Ariovistus had established himself west of the Rhine, ruling over conquered Gallic territories and demanding tribute from local tribes. The Sequani and Aedui, traditional Roman allies, appealed to Caesar for protection against this Germanic threat. Ariovistus, a towering figure with flowing blonde hair and fierce blue eyes, commanded respect and fear across the region. His Germanic warriors were known for their size, strength, and ferocity in battle. When Caesar demanded that Ariovistus cease his expansion and release his Gallic hostages, the Germanic king responded with contempt, claiming Gaul by right of conquest. The confrontation escalated when Ariovistus began moving his forces closer to Roman positions, forcing Caesar to march north with 4 legions. The stage was set for a clash between Roman discipline and Germanic fury, with control of eastern Gaul hanging in the balance. This campaign would test Caesar's legions against an entirely different type of enemy. The Battle of Vosges in 58 BCE pitted Roman discipline against Germanic ferocity in a contest that would determine the future of eastern Gaul. Ariovistus had positioned his massive warriors in dense forest terrain, hoping to negate Roman tactical advantages. The Germanic tribes believed their gods forbade fighting before the new moon, giving Caesar crucial intelligence about their superstitions. When the battle finally commenced, it was a savage affair. The Germanic warriors, some standing nearly 7 feet tall, wielded massive two-handed swords and fought with berserker fury. Their war cries echoed through the forest as they crashed into Roman lines like a human avalanche. However, Roman training and equipment once again proved decisive. The legionaries' disciplined formations held firm against the Germanic onslaught, while their gladii found gaps in enemy defenses. Caesar's tactical brilliance shone when he personally led a cavalry charge that broke the Germanic line. Ariovistus fled across the Rhine, his power broken forever. The victory secured Caesar's eastern flank and eliminated the Germanic threat to Roman Gaul. With 2 major victories behind him, Caesar established winter quarters and believed Gaul was pacified. However, the Belgian Confederation in northern Gaul viewed Roman expansion with growing alarm. Led by King Ambiorix of the Eburones and supported by the powerful Belgae tribes, they formed a massive coalition to resist Roman occupation. The Belgae were considered the fiercest warriors in all of Gaul, their reputation for courage and savagery legendary, even among other Celtic peoples. During the winter of 58–57 BCE, secret messengers moved between Belgian villages, coordinating resistance and gathering weapons. When spring arrived, Caesar learned that nearly 300,000 Belgian warriors were preparing for war. The coalition included the Bellovaci, Susians, and Nervii tribes, whose very names struck fear into Roman hearts. Caesar realized that his previous victories had merely awakened a sleeping giant. The Belgians possessed superior numbers, intimate knowledge of their forested homeland, and a burning hatred of Roman occupation. The coming campaign would test Caesar's legions as never before, requiring all his tactical genius to survive the Belgian onslaught. The Belgian campaign of 57 BCE began with Caesar's methodical advance northward, his 8 legions moving in perfect formation through the dense forests and marshlands of Belgian territory. The Belgae, recognizing they could not match Roman discipline in open battle, employed guerrilla tactics, harassing supply lines and launching surprise attacks before melting back into the wilderness. Their strategy nearly succeeded when they besieged the Roman-allied town of Bibrax, forcing Caesar to march to its relief. The siege showcased Belgian engineering skills as they constructed massive earthworks and siege engines that rivaled Roman designs. Caesar's relief of Bibrax demonstrated his tactical flexibility, using combined arms tactics that coordinated infantry, cavalry, and artillery to break the Belgian siege lines. The psychological impact was enormous. Belgian confidence began to crack as their seemingly impregnable positions fell to Roman ingenuity. Many smaller tribes, witnessing Roman military superiority firsthand, began negotiating separate peace treaties. However, the most dangerous Belgian tribe, the Nervii, remained defiant, preparing for a final confrontation that would determine the fate of northern Gaul. The Battle of the Sabis River in 57 BCE nearly ended Caesar's career in devastating defeat. The Nervii, considered the most warlike of all Belgian tribes, had prepared a masterful ambush at a river crossing. These warriors scorned trade with Romans, forbade wine and luxury goods, and lived only for war. As Caesar's legions began crossing the river and setting up camp, they believed themselves safe from attack. The Nervii had other plans. Hidden in dense woods across the river, thousands of painted warriors waited in perfect silence. When the Roman vanguard had crossed and begun fortifying, the Nervii struck with overwhelming fury. They burst from the forest like unleashed demons, their war cries shaking the earth as they charged across the shallow river. The surprise was complete. Roman soldiers scrambled for weapons as half-dressed legionaries faced fully armed Celtic warriors. 2 Roman eagles were nearly captured as entire cohorts broke and fled. Only Caesar's personal intervention, grabbing a shield and rallying his men in the front lines, prevented total disaster. The battle hung by a thread as Roman discipline battled Celtic fury in the muddy waters of the Sabis. Caesar's personal heroism at the Sabis River became the stuff of legend, transforming near disaster into glorious victory. When the Nervii assault shattered Roman formations, Caesar seized a shield from a fallen soldier and rushed into the thickest fighting. His appearance in the front ranks electrified his panicking legionaries, who rallied around their commander's scarlet cloak. The battle's tide slowly turned as Roman training reasserted itself over initial shock. Professional soldiers reformed their lines, while centurions bellowed orders above the din of clashing steel. The Nervii, despite their initial success, could not maintain their momentum against recovering Roman discipline. As fresh Roman reserves arrived from across the river, the Celtic assault finally broke. The slaughter that followed was merciless. Nearly the entire Nervii tribe was destroyed, their warriors choosing death over surrender. Belgian resistance crumbled as word of the massacre spread. Caesar had not only survived his closest brush with defeat, but had eliminated the most dangerous threat to Roman rule in northern Gaul. The Belgian campaign's conclusion left Caesar master of all Gaul from the Mediterranean to the English Channel. With mainland Gaul seemingly conquered by 55 BCE, Caesar turned his ambitious gaze toward the mysterious island of Britannia across the dangerous waters of the English Channel. The Britons had been sending military aid to their Gallic cousins, providing Caesar with justification for invasion. However, his true motives were far grander. Crossing the ocean to unknown lands would bring him glory that surpassed even Pompey's eastern conquests. The logistical challenges were immense. Caesar's engineers had to design and build a fleet capable of transporting 2 legions across treacherous waters that no Roman army had ever attempted to cross. Intelligence about Britain was scarce and unreliable, gathered from Gallic merchants who spoke of painted warriors, mysterious druids, and war chariots unseen in Gaul for generations. The Britons themselves prepared for invasion, their chieftains uniting in rare cooperation to repel the Roman threat. As Caesar's makeshift fleet assembled on the beaches of northern Gaul, his soldiers gazed nervously across the grey waters toward an island that existed more in legend than reality. The upcoming invasion would test Roman courage against the unknown terrors of the edge of the world. Caesar's first landing in Britain in 55 BCE was a near disaster that tested Roman courage to its limits. The invasion fleet, struggling against treacherous currents and fierce winds, finally approached the British coast near Dover, only to find towering white cliffs lined with painted warriors. British war chariots thundered along the cliff tops, while thousands of Celtic fighters brandished weapons and shields, their war cries echoing across the water. The sight unnerved even veteran legionaries who had conquered Gaul. Caesar ordered his fleet to sail along the coast, seeking a suitable landing beach, with the Britons shadowing them on land. When the Romans finally attempted to land through the surf, they faced a terrifying new challenge, the British war chariot. These vehicles, obsolete in Gaul for centuries, proved devastatingly effective against landing troops. The charioteers would race along the beach, hurling javelins before dismounting to fight on foot, then remounting to escape before Roman formations could respond. Only the courage of a standard-bearer who leaped into the surf, eagle held high, inspired the legionaries to follow him ashore and establish their precarious beachhead. Caesar's second British expedition in 54 BCE was far more ambitious, involving 5 legions and 800 transport vessels in the largest amphibious operation the ancient world had ever seen. This time, Caesar came prepared for British tactics, bringing cavalry to counter their war chariots and siege engines to reduce their hill forts. The invasion force landed successfully and pushed inland, defeating several British tribes in running battles across the countryside. The Britons, led by the charismatic war chief Cassivellornis, employed sophisticated guerrilla tactics, using their intimate knowledge of the terrain to harass Roman columns before fading into dense forests and marshlands. British hill forts, with their massive earthworks and cunning defenses, proved formidable obstacles, requiring all of Caesar's engineering expertise to overcome. However, the campaign's success was undermined by urgent news from Gaul rebellion was spreading among the supposedly pacified tribes, threatening to undo all of Caesar's previous conquests. Storm damage to his fleet, and the approaching winter forced Caesar to accept British submissions and tribute before withdrawing across the Channel. Though he claimed victory, Britain remained unconquered, its mystery intact beyond the grey waters that had challenged Roman ambition. While Caesar campaigned in Britain, discontent simmered throughout Gaul as the reality of Roman occupation became clear. Heavy taxation, forced grain requisitions, and the arrogance of Roman administrators sparked resentment among proud Celtic peoples who had known freedom for centuries. The spark that ignited general rebellion came in 54 BCE when the Eburones, led by their cunning chiefs Ambiorix and Catavolcus, launched a devastating surprise attack on a Roman winter camp. Using deception and false promises of safe passage, they lured an entire Roman legion into a forest ambush where virtually every soldier was slaughtered. This massacre, known as the Battle of Aduatuca, sent shockwaves through the Roman world and proved that Gallic resistance was far from broken. Word of the victory spread like wildfire across Gaul, inspiring other tribes to take up arms against their Roman oppressors. The winter of 54–53 BCE became a nightmare for isolated Roman garrisons as coordinated attacks struck across the breadth of Gaul. Caesar found himself facing not individual tribal conflicts, but a sophisticated insurgency that threatened to sweep Roman power from Gaul entirely. The easy conquests of his early campaigns had given way to a brutal war of survival. Caesar's response to the Gallic uprising was swift and merciless, earning him a reputation for both tactical brilliance and ruthless cruelty. Moving with lightning speed through winter conditions that would have stopped lesser commanders, he struck at rebellious tribes before they could coordinate their resistance. His campaign against the Eburones was particularly savage. Caesar declared his intention to utterly destroy the tribe that had massacred Roman soldiers. Using scorched earth tactics, Roman legions burned villages, slaughtered livestock, and destroyed grain stores across Eburones' territory. Ambiorix, the architect of Roman humiliation, became the most wanted man in Gaul, with Caesar offering enormous rewards for his capture. The Roman commander's psychological warfare proved as effective as his military tactics, as news of his terrible vengeance deterred other tribes from open rebellion. However, Caesar's harsh methods also deepened Gallic hatred of Roman rule, sowing seeds for an even greater uprising to come. The winter campaign demonstrated Caesar's evolution from politician general to hardened military commander, willing to use any means necessary to maintain Roman dominance. By spring of 53 BCE, the immediate crisis had passed, but the underlying causes of Gallic resistance remained unaddressed. By 52 BCE, Gallic resistance had found its ultimate leader in Vercingetorix, a young Arverni chieftain whose name would become synonymous with Celtic defiance against Roman imperialism. Unlike previous Gallic leaders who fought for tribal advantage, Vercingetorix possessed a grand vision of united Gallic resistance and the charisma to make it reality. Tall, golden-haired, and possessed of natural military genius, he understood that defeating Caesar required abandoning traditional Celtic tactics in favor of coordinated strategy. His scorched earth policy denied Roman legions the supplies they needed, while his mobile cavalry harassed their movements. Vercingetorix's greatest innovation was uniting the fractious Gallic tribes under single command, something no leader had achieved in living memory. His inspiring speeches, delivered in sacred groves before assembled warriors, promised freedom from Roman taxation and the restoration of ancient Celtic glory. The young chieftain's rebellion spread like wildfire across Gaul as tribe after tribe abandoned their Roman allegiances to join his growing army. Even Caesar, veteran of countless campaigns, recognized that he faced an entirely different caliber of opponent. The final test of his Gallic conquest had begun. The siege of Gergovia in 52 BCE marked Caesar's most humiliating defeat in the Gallic Wars, proving that Vercingetorix was a worthy opponent who had learned from Roman tactics. The Arverni stronghold, perched on an imposing hilltop and protected by massive stone walls, seemed impregnable to direct assault. Caesar's initial attempts to take the fortress failed catastrophically when a poorly coordinated Roman attack was repulsed with heavy casualties. For the first time in his Gallic campaigns, Caesar was forced to retreat, leaving his wounded behind and abandoning his siege works. The psychological impact was enormous. Gallic tribes that had remained neutral now flocked to Vercingetorix's banner, convinced that Roman invincibility was merely myth. Caesar's legions, accustomed to victory, began to doubt their commander's strategic genius. The retreat from Gergovia demonstrated that Vercingetorix had successfully adapted Roman siege techniques to Celtic defensive needs, creating fortifications that could withstand legionary assault. More importantly, the Gallic leader had shown his followers that Caesar could be defeated, transforming what had been a desperate rebellion into a war of liberation with realistic prospects of success. The momentum had shifted decisively toward the Gallic cause. Following his defeat at Gergovia, Caesar found himself in desperate circumstances as his Gallic allies deserted, and Vercingetorix's rebellion spread across the breadth of Gaul. The Roman position became critical when the Celtic leader's cavalry, now superior in both numbers and morale, threatened to cut Caesar's communications with Roman territory. In this darkest hour, Caesar's strategic genius reasserted itself through an audacious gamble. He would force Vercingetorix into a decisive battle by besieging the hilltop fortress of Alesia, where the Gallic leader had concentrated his forces. The oppidum of Alesia, home to the Mandubii tribe, occupied a plateau surrounded by steep valleys and was considered absolutely impregnable by conventional assault. Caesar's plan was breathtakingly ambitious. He would surround the entire plateau with fortifications, trapping Vercingetorix's 80,000 warriors inside their own stronghold. This circumvallation would stretch for miles around the base of the hill, requiring unprecedented engineering effort from his exhausted legions. The siege would determine the fate of Gaul, pitting Caesar's engineering skills and Roman discipline against Vercingetorix's inspiring leadership and Celtic determination in a final confrontation that would echo through history. The siege of Alesia in 52 BCE showcased Roman engineering at its most impressive as Caesar's legions constructed a double wall system that became a masterpiece of military architecture. The inner circumvallation trapped Vercingetorix's warriors inside Alesia, while the outer contravallation protected the Romans from the massive relief army gathering across Gaul. Between these walls, Caesar's soldiers built elaborate obstacles, hidden spike traps, sharpened stakes, and concealed pits designed to break cavalry charges. The engineering effort was staggering: over 11 miles of fortifications featuring walls, ditches, watchtowers, and gates, all constructed while under constant harassment from Gallic forces. Inside Alesia, conditions grew desperate as food supplies dwindled and Vercingetorix faced the horrible choice of starving his people or attempting a suicidal breakout. The psychological pressure intensified when news arrived that a massive Gallic relief army, 250,000 warriors strong, was marching to lift the siege. Caesar now found himself trapped between the anvil of Alesia and the hammer of the approaching relief force, facing the greatest military challenge of his career. The stage was set for a climactic battle that would determine whether Gaul would remain free or submit to Roman rule forever. The climactic battle of Alesia reached its crescendo when the Gallic relief army launched a coordinated three-pronged assault on Caesar's fortifications, while Vercingetorix simultaneously attacked from within. 250,000 Gallic warriors struck the Roman lines in the largest Celtic military effort in recorded history, their war cries shaking the earth as they charged the siege works. For hours, the outcome hung in balance as Roman discipline wavered under the overwhelming assault. Caesar's genius shone in this desperate moment, recognizing that conventional tactics would fail. He mounted his horse and led a final cavalry charge that struck the relief army's flank just as their assault reached its peak. This decisive maneuver, conducted with Caesar's scarlet cloak streaming behind him, shattered Gallic morale at the critical moment. The relief army broke and fled, abandoning their besieged kinsmen to Roman vengeance. Vercingetorix, witnessing the collapse of Gallic hopes from Alesia's walls, made the noblest decision of his life. He would surrender himself to save his people from massacre. Donning his finest armor, The proud chieftain rode down from Alesia and cast his weapons at Caesar's feet, ending 8 years of brutal warfare with dignity befitting a worthy opponent. Vercingetorix's surrender at Alesia in 52 BCE marked the effective end of Gallic independence and established Caesar as master of Western Europe. The proud Celtic chieftain was taken to Rome as a trophy, where he would languish in prison for 6 years before being ritually strangled during Caesar's triumph. The cruel fate that awaited those who dared challenge Roman power. The final years of the Gallic Wars, 51–50 BCE, consisted of mopping up operations as Caesar ruthlessly crushed the last pockets of resistance with characteristic efficiency. His systematic conquest had transformed Gaul from a collection of feuding tribes into a Roman province that would remain loyal for centuries. The wealth plundered from Gallic temples and cities filled Caesar's war chest, while his veteran legions gave him the military strength to challenge his rivals in Rome. More than mere conquest, the Gallic Wars represented the collision of two civilizations, Mediterranean order imposing itself upon Celtic tradition through superior organization and relentless determination. Caesar returned to Italy in 49 BCE, not merely as a successful general, but as the conqueror who had extended Roman civilization to the Atlantic Ocean, setting the stage for his own rise to supreme power. If you liked today's story, make sure to check out our other videos on our channel. Have a nice day.